The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people like you. This is 3D Politics. Featuring David Van, creator and editor of Sooner Politics, expert on Oklahoma state government, professional advocate for those needing mental health care, and state committeeman for Tulsa County GOP, also currently running as vice chair for Vice Chair State Republican Party. Indeed, also featuring David Oldham, founder and scholar of Constitutional Grounds, political leader, educational speaker, former state of Oklahoma elector of the United States Electoral College, David Oldham, and of course, beautiful me. Tommy McKay, your fine host, finding his way all the way here and remembering, of course, to record this fine show onto the cloud, just like we forget every time. So here we are, Tommy McKay, your fine verbal Viking with David Van, David Oldham. Tonight we've got a fantastic guest. If you are a regular listener, you'll know some of our greatest topic has been on the marijuana laws in the state of Oklahoma. And tonight we've got Chip Paul, the author of State Question 788, which leads us to most of our current laws that we live under today in the world of marijuana and those things legal, etc. So let's go ahead and bring Chip Paul in tonight. We've got a lot of things to discuss, but let's bring Chip Paul in and introduce him as Chip Paul. Thank you for being on the show. We appreciate your efforts for writing legislation and all those things, helping us find liberty. And so we appreciate you being on the show. We met you at our forum in Tulsa just last year. Was it last year, Van?
Yeah, it was.
About last year.
Yep.
And so we had some great discussion there with Fat Gatter and the rest of them. And so we appreciate your efforts on the marijuana laws. And thanks especially for being here with us tonight on 3D Politics Live. So let's get started, boys. Where do we want to start on this tonight?
It's been 2 years. Has it turned out the way you wanted? Yep.
For the most part, it really has. We've been very lucky, I would say, here in the state. As much as we want to gripe about our lawmakers and all that, we've been really blessed with the proper crew to kind of guard the gate to let us get started at least. Now that's kind of changing, which we may talk about a little bit tonight, but at least initially, we were very lucky with the crew we had.
So how did the whole thing start with 788? I mean, what made you write it? How did you get it in there? And what Van's asking you, did you get what you wanted? What did you want?
Oh, I think, again, so it's a 788 is a two-stage rocket, right? So the first stage rocket was 2014 when I wrote something that looked like California's law, right? And really, I wrote that to stay out of jail. My wife and I had just, tried medical marijuana. It worked well for us. I knew my son was using medical marijuana. So I knew, and again, we needed something here in the state. It was funny. There was 5 of us that met in our office in March of 2014. And, it was who was it? It was Frank Grove, and it was myself and my wife. And it was the head of DPRNOK at the time, Lisa, and her last name escapes me. And then it was Porter Davis, right?
Yes.
Sorry for my dogs, but
We all love dogs.
Yeah, Porter and Lisa Bauer. So Porter and Lisa were out, and Frank and Cindy and I decided to give it a go. So that's kind of how it all started.
Staying out of jail is always a worthy reason.
I have to say, it was about 2 years ago this month. I was having dinner with a number of legislators, a couple of them that were going back for another term, but 3 of them who were stepping out or were pushed out, I'll be honest with you. And we were talking about the medical marijuana because that was going into the session right after we passed it, right? So we were expecting them to do a lot of, knitting all of the pieces together, which you intended them to play a big part, right? The legislature.
Yep.
And, some of those were real naysayers. Mike Ritz was one, and I said to him, at this time, 3.5 years ago, a bottle of CBD oil would give you 5 years in prison in Oklahoma.
You're
I said,
right.
look how far we've come in 3.5 years.
Yep. You're
And they were like, well, yeah, wow, So we're moving the ball, which, Oldham and I always have this little deal about, are we moving the ball down the field? And Oldham's like, no, throw deep,
Sideways.
go up. Yeah.
It's just sideways.
Lateral movement.
But what we've done on CBD oil has largely moved us to where we need to be now that the farm bill's passed it, and basically anybody can do commerce in CBD oil, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. We have a company that kind of deals in natural products and CBD. So we're able to, we have a relationship with the University of Mississippi, and we couldn't talk about that relationship 2 or 3 years ago. We certainly couldn't explore anything with CBDs, and now we're writing grants with them with CBDs. Okay, so that's kind of how far we've come. So.
Sure. So we've largely gotten to where, ultimately we'd like to see it regulated about as much as tomatoes. But again, you're dealing with people with frail health and medicine. And I think Oldham would agree, proper weights and measures are an important part of regulation constitutionally.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
So
that's the point. The problem is, and we're going to get to that, is that we're seeing some draconian licensing measures being proposed. And the only way it gets there is a licensing scheme. If we don't have a licensing scheme, we actually have freedom, and we're tomato growers, essentially. What's it going to take? I guess my two thoughts are: what are your takes on the various bills that are out there, and what is it going to take to get the people who really need medicine to not have to be extorted first before they can actually go out and get it?
Yeah, so those are two really good questions, and one is a really big question, right? So if you look at what's the status quo, right? So what's our liberty status quo on medicine? Well, it's, I'd call that a scam, right? So I'd call that the pharma insurance scam. So what's it going to take? What's it going to take to break that one down? Well, I think it's exactly what we're doing, to be honest. I think you have to start chipping away at kind of the, mountain there. And the way that you do that is with natural products, because most pharma drugs come from natural products. So again, if you can begin to introduce the power of natural products, and what better way to do that than marijuana, you begin to change people's perceptions about how powerful plants are, right? So as we begin to tear down those walls, then we begin to really recognize the power that you have in your seed cabinet or your spice cabinet or your backyard, frankly, to heal yourself. So I think that we're chipping away at that, but I would call that the pharma mountain. And I would say that we've thrown a giant chink in there with our medical marijuana law, right? So that's the way I view it. I don't really view it as marijuana as being assaulted. I view it as marijuana is the assault. So we're using that to kind of chip away at this old status quo. As to current bills that are out there, yes, sir, we have some assaults going on. So we kind of had a deal, right? Interestingly enough, after really beating all of the powers that be, all of the status quo, all of the entrenched, empowered people that we did with 788. So really, we the people rose up and we said, oh, we don't care what you think Chamber of Commerce is, or, Oklahoma State Health Association or government or whatever, we're going to do medical marijuana. So sorry. And 57% of us believe that, regardless of if you outspin us, 12-1. We want this, right? And so that was a big deal, right? So, but then right after that happened, again, you have no idea the fight that went on, right? After that, the fight that went on at health, the fight that went on with the legislature, the fight that went on with the governor's office, the fight that went on behind the scenes to preserve your liberty. And that was a big fight, right? Yeah, we had to have some attorneys involved in that fight and all kinds of stuff. But during that, so we had 14 weeks, you guys will recall, of hearings, kind of it wasn't a special session, we can't call this, but it was an interim study, let's say. It was a, bicameral, bipartisan. But at the end of that, we had some promises, right? So we decided that we would, all agree on a unity bill. Woohoo. So we all came together. Second thing that Governor Stitt signed, which was pretty cool, open carry in the unity bill, right?
Yeah.
But there were some backroom promises in that. And I'm answering your question finally, David, after all that. But basically the backroom promises were that there were 3, let's say, electric rails in the law that we were going to leave alone for a while. And we weren't going to petition the legislature, right? And can we? Yeah. And could we again? Yes. Like, frankly, no one else in the state can. If we want to pull together another petition, we absolutely can and will. But we agreed to not petition over them and allow them to develop the law as long as they didn't jack with our 3 rails, right? And those 3 rails were, don't mess with medical conditions, right? We don't want medical conditions in our law, but we want physician accountability. So if you want to bolster that up, go right ahead. Don't put commercial license limits on our law because we want free market principles to develop. But again, don't allow unmarket principles to flourish, like no law enforcement. I mean, that's kind of stupid. That's not really free market principles. And then the third thing was, everyone has a right to grow their own medicine, right? We said as long as you don't mess with those 3 things, we're not gonna break our promise, and we won't petition over you.
Yeah.
Oldham, what do you got?
Well, I will never, ever ask permission to use whatever I'm going to use and to get healthy or for my own pleasure. I don't care that there is a law saying that I'm a criminal for doing so, because I'm not. And our law, our Constitution already has that built into it. And I'm wondering why we are allowing ourselves to have this thing continue and continually have to go back and revisit and have more extortion put on us and more problems, with government, because we've left the door open for them given them permission to do that. And I don't understand that, because again, I will never ask permission. So why is it that people think that they can vote me in to be a criminal? Why do when is it going to be that we're going to actually go for actual freedom?
Government is pushing you around. Once again, you're listening to David Oldham from constitutionalgrounds.com speak eloquently about your freedoms with Chip Paul. Don't interrupt me when I'm on a roll. Also, David Van, here you are. Well, here we are again with Facebook Live, 3D Politics, your fine verbal Viking and perspicuous plunderer of conversations, Tommy McKay, speaking with the author of State Question 788, all your current marijuana laws. I just got to say, marijuana is a plant. It's a weed that grows naturally. If mint, also, not necessarily perhaps a weed, I don't know, but it also grows naturally. There was never a federal agenda against mint. There's a federal agenda against another plant. There's never a federal agenda against oregano or anything else you could also burn. And so what's interesting for Chip Paul is you've got to negotiate the public opinion against marijuana as though it's something other than a plant that grows naturally. You can't really grow your own aspirin. Am I right or am I wrong? I don't know how you
Actually, Tom, you're wrong.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying, there's a lot of things. I don't mean to be. What I'm saying is, these things that you can grow naturally. Well, it's not like you got to go to a chemist.
And this is the thing. This is the thing that the marijuana breaks this paradigm. But this is what you may or may not know, Tom, is you can grow your own aspirin. In fact, the oregano that you grow in your backyard is highly medicinal. Yeah. The periwinkles that you're growing in your front yard for the beautiful, things that they are actually chemo drugs. Okay. So we don't recognize the power that we have in our backyard. So marijuana begins to open us up to really what that is. But
sure. Yeah. I wanted to say, my study of Oklahoma history tells me on this date, 90 years ago, marijuana was fully legal in Oklahoma, but liquor was a federal crime. So it's all relative, right? We just flip around this, what do you call it? Reefer madness that took over in the 70s.
Well, and I will just throw in a note that I learned just yesterday, and that is the Enabling Act for Oklahoma, the federal Enabling Act that made us a state, gave us the opportunity to be a state, included a prohibition on alcohol within the state for at least 20 years. So in 1906, when it was signed by the president, we had a dictate from the feds that we had to be dry state.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I did not know it until I found it yesterday.
Right. So, on the day that we voted for statehood, there were two ballot questions. One was to accept the Constitution, and two, a state question about prohibition. Those were the two things.
Now, Van, I wasn't there, but you were there voting on that.
It wasn't as cold and snowy as today.
So, yes. Had to save myself. But my ignorance shows the fact that the feds and the state and governments and licensing are all up in our business for things we can grow like oregano. There's really no difference between aspirin, oregano, and any other damn thing you can concoct, except for what the public opinion is that's been generated against it. So, Chip Paul, how did you get involved in, I understand, but how did you know to write this legislation and get it submitted for those other people who are wanting to protect our liberty and just citizens?
Boy, that's a good question, because I would say, a lot of this is inspired. I was an instrument, I would say to some degree, because if you look at this, we have a very unique law, and I wanted to unleash two things. I wanted to unleash the kind of the patient cap, right? So when you take off medical conditions, you unleash that patient cap, but I wanted to have physicians responsible, for that relationship. But then on the business side, I wanted to have a free market, really see kind of what a free market economy was all about. And it really annoyed me that, someone like me who, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of wealth. If I was in Illinois or Florida, I might have been the author of the law there, but I couldn't get in the business. So it's like, oh, we're not going to have that happen here. And that's what's so annoying about things like 2272 or whatever that license restriction thing is that's out there now, right? So,
yeah, that's looking at two provisions. One, putting a cap. Another thing is if your business gross receipts drops below a certain amount, the state can just shut you down, destroy your business.
You're losing me. Put a cap on what? Licenses?
The total number of licenses. We're going to, one of the ideas in the legislature right now is at some point this year, we're going to draw a line saying no more. And then until somebody releases their license or loses it, and then there's going to be this lottery. And to get a lottery ticket, it's going to cost you $12,500, and that's not for a license.
This is standard procedure. There's no consumers that are clamoring down there to make sure we get laws passed to save ourselves from those evil sellers. Okay, it is the industry against itself. Okay, it is that the marijuana producers and sellers, distributors are fighting amongst themselves, and the stronger ones are wanting to kick the doors closed for the weaker ones, in my opinion.
Right. And we believe in cottage industries. There's not all of them that are going to be the big, chains of, CVS versus Walgreens and that whole fight. There's some people that, let's say it's a small rural town, and there's no place to go for naturopathic medicine, for hours drive, and somebody decides to put a shop in. But if their gross sales doesn't maintain at a certain amount just in marijuana, one of the bills that's being pushed in the legislature says, no, you lose your license. Your business is gone. State has shut you down for not being profitable enough.
Chip Paul, what do you think about the industry? So you've got people in the marijuana industry, those that are strong in it. And and my contention is there's no consumers that are rushing to insist on licensing. It is those people that are already in the marijuana industry that are insisting on licenses and shutting the door, right? They want to shut the door on licensing. Yep. And so how does that affect the industry and the individual trying to find their way to liberty?
Well, it's the exact thing that we wanted to avoid, right? So we wanted the marijuana industry to be an opportunity for every Oklahoman.
Yeah.
Again, it went on the campaign trail. I used the analogy of donut shops. Like, why in the world would you limit the amount of donut shops in your town? Why would you say, "Oh, we're going to have a donut shop voucher system"?
Donut madness. Oh, I'm.
It's a $10,000 donut shop voucher system, right? So, but we kind of have, and I always kind of envision this free market marijuana economy, which we kind of have. But again, it's kind of out of control because we don't have the back end of what we need, and that's enforcement, right? So we don't have any cleanup going on. So if you want to come in from California and pay your $2,500 and open your tin shed and, sell black market marijuana, you're probably able to do that for a little while here until we have enforcement. So, we need to get it cleaned up, but at the same time that we don't need to limit licenses, and for the very reason that, and again, I was in some of those meetings when people suggested that stuff. I know where this comes from. You guys know where this comes from. This isn't a you and me, we the people bill. This is a protect my giant investment and make me $1 jillion bill, right? So
I'm not afraid to make
it.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of making $1 jillion, but I'm against other people keeping other people from. I'm against people keeping from other people making $1 jillion too.
Right, and those in the industry will often set up rules that benefit them, that fit in with their business model. And let's say, if you're an eyeglass guy, you do that. Well, now all of a sudden this whole, in the 50s and 60s, the idea of department store came in, and the opticians, we can't have department stores selling eyeglasses. And now 70 years later, we still can't buy eyeglasses in a department store.
Actually, you can. You can.
Oh, you contrarian, Oldham. So,
walk into a club. They have department.
You got to throw in your butt, though. You got to
cling to your truth.
You got to go through.
You cling to your truth like a religion. So, Chip Paul, let me ask you this: you say enforcement, and somebody California. So, when you're talking about enforcement, you're talking about state enforcement. Is that correct?
Yeah. And again, so let me kind of clarify some things too. So I want to kind of,
Yeah, because I got a follow up. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go a little bit on the defensive with OMMA because again, when I wrote the law, I mean, I kind of knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just a guy like you, right? So I just
No,
I
you knew what you were doing.
didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't, I didn't know enough to give the OMMA, the proper enforcement teeth that they kind of needed, in a guns and badges kind of exercise to be able to do what they need to do. So they are somewhat hamstrung, but again, that to me is no excuse. That you've got $70 million, go figure that
That's their personal
out, right?
Yeah, that's their area. You're
Exactly.
just showing them which
Okay.
direction to do it. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
now let's look at a bunch of metrics here real quick. We're talking money. Is the state losing money with medical marijuana? No, we're actually getting close to the amount that we take from liquor taxes, is my understanding. So public safety, are people dying in the streets, overdosing, and no, public safety is just fine. Okay, law enforcement, criminal behavior, we're not seeing that with this. This is one of the cleanest industries. There's a bunch of other industries I would say are a lot more criminal than the dispensaries and the growers. Black market issue aside, that's an important thing that we don't know until we actually start, going after that. So I'm looking at all these things and I'm saying, Chip, this is the most amazing thing. This is far beyond my expectations for a clean run, successful, getting people well. Right?
Yeah. Again, like I said, I think, this is somewhat, it's an inspired, law and because it came through me does not mean that it's not. We're very lucky, to kind of have this. And I really, it was very thoughtful. I mean, we really, Cindy and I put a lot of time and energy and still do into marijuana, here in Oklahoma, into policy and kind of how to shape and craft that and how to guide the industry. So it was thoughtfully done. But at the same time, I had us at, New Mexico's economy, $100 million a year, $7 million to the OMMA, $3.5 million to run the department, right? So I missed it by about 10x, in my estimation. So,
Well, actually, go ahead, Oldham.
I've got to ask everybody here, how do you have a black market if you are truly in a free society?
So yeah, so that's a really good, you don't, right? So again, but how do you create that free society? It's a bigger problem. I think like I said, marijuana is my, pick and chisel to begin to kind of chip away at that mountain.
Well, we don't have freedom with marijuana. I'm not
license.
allowed to just go use marijuana. Go
Correct.
purchase it, possess it, or anything else unless I bend my knee and supplicate myself to all the bureaucrats and go through all the hoops that unfortunately
I was happy until just now.
So I would step up a level and argue that in a little different way. So I am not free with my health. Right? I haven't been free with my health. I've had to rely on a damn pharma system. I've had to go to the doctor. I've had to rely on insurance. I've had to rely on this other crap. Well, now I have medical marijuana, and that frees me for my health. And again, it's not a totally free system, but it's
I've used natural health techniques for 35 years, so I've been free. I can't though lawfully things because other people have decided they have the right to dictate, rules over me.
Hey, we're going to take a hard break. Chip Paul, can you stick around through the hard break? Thank you very much. Van is going to roll us a little video here. We're going to take about 45-second break. You're listening to the 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook with Tommy McKay, David Van, David Oldham, and our special guest tonight, Chip Paul.
But yes, the new wellness rage is CBD, marijuana's less fun cousin. They say it has all the benefits of weed without the high. But then what's the point? I only smoke weed to get high. I'm not doing it to make friends with white guys who love reggae. So the whole world is doing CBD. But there's one tiny issue. The B in CBD might stand for bullshit. So we don't know if CBD works, but we do know it makes a buttload of money. And if you're a CBD user who's getting angry because I said it doesn't work, guess what? You getting angry means it's not working.
Good old Lewis Black.
Oh, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. "3D Politics Live." I'm just sure I can come back in at any second. Oh, there we are, kids. The American Constitutional Republic, affairs of state of Oklahoma. Beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like you. This is 3D Politics. I'm Tommy McKay with David Vann, David Oldham, and tonight's special guest, Chip Paul, author of State Question 788, All the Laws We're Living Under. And I wanted to ask right before the break, Chip Paul, wouldn't it be accurate to say that the State Question 788 is the law that literally gave Oklahoma the income that it's seeing? I mean, isn't this the money that we're seeing at the state level based on the state question? The words you wrote made Oklahoma government money. Is that correct?
Definitely, that's correct. I don't know.
Can I borrow $5?
yeah. I should have wrote in some kind of and every 1.5% needs to go.
No, but really, this is I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my expertise as being wrong. But I mean, literally, you're a guy, you're a regular guy, you're a citizen, you wrote a thing, you knew how to get it submitted into law, etc. But literally, your efforts have created revenue for the state, right?
Yeah.
You've created revenue for the state.
Well, and again, I mean, I'm nobody special. Like you said, I'm just a guy like you guys. In what world does a nobody special write a law, create a movement, and get something done like we've been able to get done here in Oklahoma?
Well, America, welcome to America.
It's just stupid.
I want to drill down on that. Now, Chip, you're about as much an expert as anybody. I would put Lloyd Noble III in there, because he, back in 1991, got term limits in Oklahoma, the first state to do it.
Yeah.
And voted for it.
Yes,
there.
Absolutely. And tried to get him an award. I talked to him a few years ago about it, and I wanted to get him an award. I did.
Dang it.
Yes.
Dang it.
Well, anyway, so here's the deal. I grew up in Minnesota. I didn't know what vote initiative petition is. It doesn't exist. It's only available in 24 states out of the 50. Oklahoma being one of them. California is very well known, as Oldham knows, he growing up there. Fact is, right now they have not only that, but they have initiative petition and recall of the governor, and they're about to do it for the second time in 20 years.
Wait, hold up. But you'll notice that they're requiring signature matching on all of the signatures on that petition.
Oh, it matters.
That one out.
That's actually not, just so you know, that's not new, but they are going the extra step this time.
Yeah.
For those who aren't aware, I may be a Trump supporter, but not nearly as much as Chip Paul's been a Trump supporter.
Somebody's got to do it.
And last summer, I'm down there at the Trump rally in downtown Tulsa. Tulsa, and I finally make my way up to the front of the outdoor stage, and guess who the groupies are in the front row? Chip and Cynthia Paul.
Well, I mean,
we're right on the front row of the outdoor stage, but they're just looking for people. Yeah. So we're inside.
So, but what I want to talk about here is the initiative petition process. And this is the one thing that to me is my Alamo. If the state's gonna do a constitutional convention for Oklahoma, like we're required every 20 years, we can't let that convention be dominated by lawmakers, because the first thing they're gonna do is write out of existence the citizens' ability to go around the legislature. What do you think of that?
Oh, and we can't lose that, right? So that's one of the things that, again, I'm kind of goofy sometimes, but I'm very serious about Oklahoma, and I'm very serious about Oklahoma politics. I'm a sixth generation Oklahoman. My family are, one of the founders of the state, and I care very deeply about the state, our position, who we are as people, who we are as Americans, how we represent this nation. So that's very, very, very important to me. But over my dead body, will we lose the right to petition in this state, right? Because again, that's something that's very important here. So let's just take this potential, breaking of the promise, if you will, of 2272, right? So, and again, that's something that would limit licenses here in Oklahoma. That's something that we, backroom promised with legislatures. You allow us our 3 rails and let those develop, and we won't petition over you. So again, now that's a broken promise, but, potentially if it gets out of committee, maybe it's a broken promise. So hopefully it won't get out of committee, guys. Let's not let it out of committee. But if it does, to me, that's a broken promise. So again, now we can go petition for, whatever we want. We want to write we know all the problems and the holes that we left out in 788, don't we? And who's done the only successful We the People petition here in Oklahoma, and don't think that we can't do it again, because we absolutely can.
Yeah. Our mutual friend, Cody Barlow, went with us that day. We were at the Capitol for the first session. We call it the joint interim study. Cody Barlow, he's a veteran that was so pumped full of benzos and all kinds of drugs from the VA. He was a zombie. Yep. Family sends him to Colorado. And what do you know? We get a veteran off of the tranquilizers. We've been getting people off of all the pain medicines. Did the legislature do that? No, the people did.
I'll tell you a quick kind of funny story, and I'm really lucky. I've got a great network of people, nationally, and in 2016 I was voted as cannabis business executives top 100 in marijuana in the country or whatever. So I've been around for a while, and I've got a good network, kind of a OG marijuana guy, if you will, but in the kind of backroom politics, or so to speak. But in 2018, when we were running this whole thing, you'll recall we had some people write some big checks, big no checks, right? So we didn't have anybody write any big yes checks, really. We had some big no checks, right? And the Chickasaws were one of the, and I'm, again, 6th generation Chickasaw Indian, right? So it really it hurt me. It kind of made me mad. I was like, damn it, what the hell are my peeps doing? I mean, this is our deal, our vibe, right? We should be embracing this, not writing checks against it. But I had a call with the Chickasaw executive leaders, and I won't tell you who, but, some of the Chickasaw executive leadership last fall. And they said, gosh, they didn't say that we're sorry that we wrote that no check, but they said that we have really seen, the opiate crisis that happened, and the fact that we had medical marijuana as kind of a stay against that, and all of the progress that they've seen in kind of the Chickasaw health system with medical marijuana, they would revisit that decision. And that meant a lot to me. That was a big deal. Yeah. And then the other kind of interesting conversation I've had lately is with Commerce. And it, just so you guys know, think about this, right? So I'll give you the next. Chip's going to go tilt windmills on his white horse again, play Don Quixote or whatever. So I think our state is very uniquely set up. So again, if you look at what Austin did 20, 25 years ago with kind of tech, right? So they said, we're going to be the next tech capital. And so they went out and kind of did that. Well, I think we can do that with pharma, with what pharma is going to become, because pharma is going to become more this natural products, health-based, plant-based medicine, so to speak. And so we're in a unique position as a state to go capture that, with our medical marijuana program, but also with hemp and kind of with what comes next. And that's plant-based molecules and hallucinogens and a whole bunch of stuff that's coming down the pike. So we've been having all these discussions with Commerce, with the Lieutenant Governor's office about, how do we develop that, right? And by the way, if you want to get involved in that, love to have you. Come on, Chip at newfarmer.com or OK for you approved.
Yeah. Say that again. How do they find you, Chip Paul?
So Chip at New Pharma, GNUPHARMA.com. So that's our company, New Pharma, but new is just spelled GNU instead of NEW. Okay. And then we have a trade organization for the marijuana industry called OK, and then the number 4, and then you approve. So OK for you approve. But either way, would love to kind of have your involvement. But I was talking to Commerce about all these ideas and come on, let's go. Well, I was talking to the Lieutenant Governor's office first. They said, we're sales and marketing. Talk to Commerce because they actually get shit done. Not that Lieutenant Governor's office doesn't, but they do.
Yeah.
And Commerce is great, right? So Sean Copeland, great guy. Sean is the head of Bank Regent, which is one of the marijuana banks here in Oklahoma. Yeah. So our, Secretary of Commerce knows quite a bit about the marijuana industry. But I had a call with him, which was great. And I asked him, I said, well, Sean, or, Secretary Copeland, when you were talking to Elon Musk, did marijuana come up? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, was it a positive? He said, yeah. I go, was it a positive in most conversation? He goes, yeah. He goes, it really is. He goes, the only time it's negative is sort of workforce stuff, where people are worried about, someone driving a tractor into their workforce or wherever, whether they're stoned or something. But he said, generally it's a very positive conversation. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to ask if you wanted to give shout outs, maybe a handful of who you think the best players in state government are in working positively for the patients here. Who would you give the shout outs to?
Oh, wow. I know I'm going to leave somebody out.
I know you are.
If I leave somebody out, I'm very sorry. But there's no question that, again, we wouldn't be where we are without John Eccles. So Representative John Eccles is, if you want to, I wrote the law, but again, it wouldn't be the law without John Eccles. And Representative Scott Fettgutter is certainly, on that team. Those two guys have been great, but the speaker is standing right behind them, although he does so very quietly. And I would say that, what was the second piece of legislation our governor signed? Well, it was the Unity Bill, right? So I think we do have a friend in our governor. I know we certainly have a friend with Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell. I listened to Matt Pinnell speak and basically lecture some lawmakers about supporting our marijuana industry, how important it is to the future of Oklahoma. So I know that his office is very much behind it. I know Copeland's office, Secretary Copeland's office is very much behind it. On the Senate side, that's just where I'm so disappointed. We just don't have a leader, that stepped forward there. And I really wish we would have a champion there, somebody who we could, kind of, here's my American flag hat. I want to really, toss it to somebody over there in the Senate, but we don't have that guy or girl. I wish we did.
Sure.
You guys are currently listening to Chip Paul, the author of A State Question 788. We are all living under those current marijuana laws, and you are also listening to, once again, here we are again, Facebook Live with Tommy McKay and 3D Politics Live, David Vann, David Oldham, tonight's special guest, Chip Paul. Chip, as we head into my next audio signal. I have a question about the federal law versus the state law. So there's a whole world that we're operating in. Thank you, Scotty. There's a whole world we're operating in about state law, but the people who are moving and selling marijuana product in the state right now are operating under the guise that they will be protected by state law when the feds. So it's like there is a pretense here that we are operating under law that is solid, and that is basically 100% bull crap, because the feds at any one given time, for a person who's operating totally 100% legally under state Oklahoma law, can be nailed under federal law. Tell me.
I respectfully disagree, Tommy.
Please, that's why I ask.
Yeah. So again, if I could do anything in the world right now, I'd go revisit some election results in some states, but I can't, and I can't even if I'm the federal government, can I? I might be.
Hold on, you're losing me. You're smarter than me. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to teach. So
I mean, my right as an Oklahoman doesn't circumvent, let's say, your right as a Georgian, right? So you have the right to conduct your business in the way that you did as a state. You conducted your elections in a way that I don't find acceptable at all. In fact, I would have joined the Texas Supreme Court lawsuit, right?
Okay, I'm following so far.
Okay, so again, we have in our country, and this isn't this the topic of the day? Really, the thing that you brought up, and I'm just bringing this up, the election, kind of potential fraud or whatever.
I'm following the analogy.
Yeah, as just an example of states' rights, because I think we've all recognized recently how important states' rights are. So again, good luck trying to take my guns here in Oklahoma, and good luck trying to take my marijuana.
There are people who are moving product, okay, and they take so many pounds to drop it off, and they in their minds they are operating under, some of those deliverers are operating under the pretense that they are protected by state law. And they think, but really it's just like the old days of a drug deal. You don't drop off your weed without the money, because you're not protected by any law. And if you press state law, guess what? The feds will come in and say, it's not even legal. The feds don't even consider it legal. How can the state exercise their right to protect a citizen that you're writing law for when the feds won't even cover it?
Yeah, no, and that's a really good, that's a fundamental question, isn't it? I mean, of really law and constitution, right? We're protected. It's like Oklahoma, as to marijuana, and as to a whole lot of things, Oklahoma kind of has this hard boundary, and we have rights as a state that cannot really be violated by federal law. And again, this is what our forefathers, had all kinds of arguments about, federalists versus, states' rights guys, right? So again, you have strict constitutionalists and you have state rights guys. So let Oldham get in, because I know he's got something to say here.
Oldham had a visceral reaction.
You really want?
let him talk a little bit.
Well, the problem is it wasn't about state rights. States don't have rights. They only have powers from our communal rights. They represent our communal rights, our individual rights. And states cannot violate those rights, just like the feds are not to violate those rights. So the argument is not between states' rights versus strong federal government. It was about individual sovereignty, individual rights versus all governments, both federal and state. And then the states, being closer to the people, we are supposed to be able to more readily access them and change them and make sure that they are protecting our rights.
So
but it's not our rights, not states.
I love that. As a guy who has traditionally loved states' rights, I like your angle that states don't have rights. They're not an individual. Individuals have rights.
Well,
Groups don't have
yeah, but
rights.
before we were a federal republic, we were a commonwealth of 13 states, right? And those 13 states gave birth to a federal entity. The states are the parents of the federal entity. And sadly, over 250 years now, we're seeing the states as the children of the federal government. That's a fundamental change of mentality has to take place.
Yes,
Well,
but it is a weird situation, because although the states brought it, I mean, it came from we the people, and we the people are the states. So there is no sovereign head of state, as much as at times the governor may want us to believe so. But there is no sovereign head of state. We are the sovereigns over the state. Now, what we have to do is we have to make sure that the state actually acts within its lawful bounds, and that is that they don't get to dictate to us.
All right.
So this is beautiful. Chip Paul has written legislation that's been passed and authorized under state government that has supported the states' rights to allow their citizens freedom in this one tiny little area, despite the federal government. All right, hold on. I tried to hit me.
Well, and I have to credit.
Me?
No, it was before you. No, Pat Campbell here for something he said. He didn't know that he was doing it, but it was an epiphany that I had. And this is that he said he didn't want government to legalize marijuana because he didn't want the government promoting marijuana. And what I realized in that whole thing is government doesn't have the right to prohibit it in the first place, nor create a scheme to license it, and therefore they're okay because they're not promoting it or discouraging it. They're not allowed to do anything except make sure that we all behave ourselves in the transaction.
All right, we have iced our fine guest out of the conversation for the last 10 minutes or so. Let's let Chip Paul, author of State Question 788, tell us what do you think about the last couple of minutes of our conversation?
Oh, I'm kind of digging what David's saying. I mean, I kind of agree with him. He's right. Again, how do you take my rights and project those up, through state government and national government? Well, that's what our Constitution does, but it really protects the rights of we the people. And oh my gosh, 788 should be one of the greatest examples of a we the people movement ever. I mean, we were opposed by everyone. Again, we had to lead it, but it's not like we had a lot of money or anything. It just, it had to be kind of managed and organized, but that's about all we did. It had kind of a life of its own. It's one of the, greatest, I think, we the people movements ever in history, ever.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. Any other left unsaid things, Chip, you want to say as we close out?
Oh, thank you guys for what you're doing. Again, I think, we live in really interesting times. So I think talking about, liberty and freedom, certainly right now, is something that we all need to be holding on to and, frankly, guarding with everything in us. So it's, our liberties and freedoms are frankly threatened right now. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah, and thank you. One of the things that, as I connect the dots between things most people don't, there's a gal named Rosa Parks. She sits on a bus and it turns into a big deal. It's a big deal. And here's a guy named Chip Paul. He writes a thing, just him and his wife, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And so it's amazing how these things where it's a simple illustration of an exercising of a simple right that becomes an issue between states' rights versus federal rights, which becomes an exercise of freedom for each individual. So, Chip Paul, I appreciate you being on the show and all the things you're doing to promote individual freedom. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate what you do too. And we all need to keep it up. Really important right now. So,
Well, we hope to have you back on the show in the next year and find out what's we're doing to follow up. So let's tell them once again to find out what you're doing, Chip Paul, and where to find you and how to support what you're doing.
so we have a company called New Pharma, GNUPHARMA. So newpharma.com or New Pharma on Facebook. We have a brand through that research and development called True Medics. So TRUEMEDX. We have some good formulations there. So, yep. And then we also, my wife and I help with a marijuana trade organization called OK, the number 4, and then the letter U approved. We do weekly Facebook shows there. So we try to feature, a member, like a medical marijuana community member or ancillary service, things like that. So again, we try to do a lot for the industry still. So
Excellent, Chip Paul. We're gonna beam you out. There you go. Ah, well, there he goes, Chip Paul. Wow. How about that for an amazing interview? What do you think, guys?
Oh, that was good.
Not bad. So that was fantastic because it really wasn't until now that I realized how it is that just simple individual contributors that live in the town you live in, much like Oldham. I thought the Electoral College was like, the Keebler elves or whatever, it's a thing in a cartoon where they pretend and then they decide who the president is and poof. But then I was like, holy crap, you can meet one? Look, there's a Keebler elf and his name is David Oldham. He's got a bigger build than an elf. My God.
Our mutual friend, Rhonda Smith, was the elector this year.
So there you go. So
the only one in the photo without a mask.
I'm just thank God. She helped me paint my background. But I'm just saying, so here it is, Chip Paul. Here's a guy who all he's doing is his little effort in his little world, and literally like Rosa Parks, I'm not kidding about that. This it reflects on state politics in its relationship with federal politics that changes the world for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because we have the ability to write these kinds of things and do this kind of work. And it's one of the things that my eyes were open when I moved to Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma is so much smaller than California.
Right.
I was all of a sudden I was, a somebody,
There you go.
Pond. And
Stuart Smalley. I am somebody.
And I'm wearing the right sweater for it too. But
nice.
And people like me. But the thing is that I know it is, isn't it? But here's the thing. This is why we all need to learn the Constitution, because we have the right to petition our government and to petition our fellow citizens for something. Here he had something he wanted to get done and he got it done. We all want to write it correctly so that it does do what we want it to do and doesn't come back to bite us. Because if we leave the door open for them, they will jump through it. That's what we're seeing with 2272.
Absolutely. Vigilance is always a necessity. If you want liberty, you have to stay vigilant. Because there's always going to be people trying to gain more power for them by taking away your rights. That's just the way it is. Yep.
Liberty is a concept that desires a consistency of reality.
Yeah.
Progressivism is a desire to manipulate the consistency into turmoil.
Yeah.
So as we look to concede for a final conclusion to allow things to relax, the progressive always is caustic and always continues to manipulate and always reminds of the failures. And the progressive is always asking for a turmoil, never looking for a conservancy of consistency.
You want to shut up a progressive, a leftist, ask him what will make him content, because he has no answer for you, because he will never be content. He will not answer that, because that would hem him in, and you could use his words against him. Now, I want to say something, Oldham. You talk about the U.S. Constitution, and you're right. It is it not the oldest continuously governing document in effect today? I believe our Constitution has been enforced longer than any other nation currently organized on Earth.
Correct.
But when it comes to state constitutions, I take almost the opposite view. It isn't that we don't, well, yes, we don't know our own state constitutions well enough, but on the other hand, we need to study other state constitutions. I say this, why? Because growing up in Minnesota, I never even knew that the people anywhere had the right to circulate a petition and go around their own legislature and governor.
Gentlemen, I'm going to take us out on this final note. I want to thank again Chip Paul for being here, author of State Question 788. Gentlemen, anything before we get out of here?
I got to plug one thing. I know Oldham will have some.
We're not done.
No. Just
you guys are warm.
I got to plug constitutional grounds. Go to constitutional grounds, find links to every state constitution. There. I put them up for that very reason, exactly what David said. So,
exactly.
Go there.
The lead headline, SoonerPolitics.org, huge article on the downside of the pandemic, how Oklahoma turned out. We have the third lowest fatality rate in the nation, the most open state in the nation, and this is other people saying it, not me. And we have flattened the curve better than just about any other state. I've got charts and graphs from all kinds of respected national data collectors. So look it up, Sooner Politics.
So you can find that information about how we have kicked the ever-loving crap out of the COVID here in Oklahoma right there at SoonerPolitics.org. And, of course, David Oldham at ConstitutionalGrounds.com is tuning everybody in to those pertinent parts of the Constitution for their state. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a fine show, and we want to thank Chip Paul for showing up this evening, and of course, as always, my cohorts, David Van, creator and editor of SoonerPolitics.org, expert on Oklahoma state government, professional advocate for those needing mental health care, state committeeman for the Tulsa County GOP, and also currently running as a candidate for the vice chair of state Republican Party. And of course, always, David Oldham, our fine constitutional contender, founder and scholar of ConstitutionalGrounds.com, political leader, educational speaker, and former state of Oklahoma elector of United States Electoral College. We want to appreciate both you guys for being here every Monday night, 2 years running. And Chip Paul, of course, but I am your fine verbal Viking, Tommy McKay. We will see you guys next week on Monday. I appreciate it once again. Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.